Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, in our last episode, we heard three different things. We heard how Lord Balaram acted as the original spiritual master, which he is. Technically, he is the original spiritual master. But he acted as spiritual master when speaking to Rukmini and Krishna, because Balaram arrived at the point where Balaram and the Yadu fighters defeated all the opposing soldiers of Jarasandha and so many others. And when Balaram reached there, he saw Krishna had snipped at Rukmini's mustache and beard, making him look very odd. And so Balaram gave good instructions both to Rukmini and Krishna. Yes, Balaram can instruct Krishna. Yes. So to Krishna, Balaram said, you should not have done this to Rukmini, because no matter what, now he is our relative. And you have disfigured him. You have made him look funny. You should not have done this. And to Rukmini, Balaram said, why are you lamenting? There's nothing to lament about. This is the nature of Kshatriyas. They fight. That's what they do. And your so-called affection for your brother is misplaced, because even if someone is a family member, if they're an aggressor, then they sometimes have to be killed also. So Balaram gave good instructions to Krishna. Balaram gave good instructions to Rukmini. Meanwhile, Rukmini kept his promise. He had vowed, when everyone else had failed, Rukmini had promised that he would not return until he defeated Krishna. Well, Balaram defeated Rukmini's army as well. And Rukmini was defeated by Krishna. Krishna was at the verge of killing him, but instead he made him look funny. So Rukmini had vowed that if he was not successful, he would not return to his kingdom. And Rukmini, good quality here, he kept his promise, and he settled up in a new village called, I think it's called Bhogavati. And we will hear about Rukmini later, because we're not finished with Rukmini. We have some more interesting, another interesting episode with this Rukmini. And we will see how Lord Balaram ultimately deals with Rukmini. But that's coming up later. And then we finally heard how Krishna married Rukmini, how everyone in Dwaraka was so happy that Krishna was marrying the original goddess of fortune, Mahalakshmi, in this form as Rukmini, Krishna's first wife. And we heard that even King Bhishmaka, Rukmini's father, he came and attended the marriage. And then, I don't know if any of you found it interesting, but I did, that it was mentioned that Nanda Maharaj and the cowherder boys also attended the wedding in Dwaraka. I find that most astounding. Now, it doesn't say that Yashoda came or the gopis came or Radharani came. All we were told is that Nanda Maharaj and the cowherder boys, they were there at Krishna's wedding. And that's how we ended up. So let us begin today's episode. Hopefully we will have 3 episodes. So the first one is called, Who is Prajuna? It is said that Cupid, who is directly part and parcel of Lord Vasudeva, and who was formerly burned to ashes by the anger of Lord Shiva, took birth from the womb of Rukmini, begotten by Krishna. This is Kamadev, a demigod of the heavenly planets, who is especially capable of inducing lusty desires. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, has many grades of parts and parcels. But the quadruple expansions of Krishna, namely Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Prajuna, and Aniruddha, are directly in the Vishnu category. Kama, or the Cupid demigod, who would later take birth from the womb of Rukmini, was also named Prajuna. But this Prajuna cannot be the Prajuna of the Vishnu category. No, this Cupid belongs to the category of Jiva Tattva, or ordinary soul. But for special power in the category of demigods, Cupid was a part and parcel of the supreme prowess of Lord Prajuna. That is the verdict of the Goswami disciples of Lord Chaitanya. Therefore, when Cupid was burned to ashes by the anger of Lord Shiva, he merged into the body of Lord Vasudeva, and to get his body again, he was begotten in the womb of Rukmini by Lord Krishna himself. Thus he was born as the son of Krishna and celebrated by the name Prajuna. Because he was begotten by Lord Krishna directly, his qualities were most similar to those of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So now we go to our next episode entitled Prajuna and Mayabati. There was a demon of the name Shambhara who was destined to be killed by this Prajuna. The Shambhara demon knew of his destiny, and as soon as Shambhara learned that Prajuna had taken birth, Shambhara took the shape of a woman and kidnapped the baby Prajuna from the maternity home less than 10 days after his birth. The demon took Prajuna and threw him directly into the ocean. But, as it is said, Mare Krishna Rake Ke, Rake Krishna Mare Ke. Whoever is protected by Krishna, no one can kill. And whoever is destined to be killed by Krishna, no one can protect. So, when Prajuna was thrown into the ocean, a big fish immediately swallowed up Prajuna. Later, this fish was caught in the net of a fisherman, and the fish was later sold to the Shambhara demon. Now, in the kitchen of that demon, there was a maidservant whose name was Mayabati. This woman had formerly been the wife of Cupid, called Rati. So when the fish was presented to the demon Shambhara, it was taken charge of by his cook, who was to make it into a palatable fish preparation. Prabhupada now makes a comment. Demons and Rakshasas are accustomed to eat meat, fish, and similar non-vegetarian foods. Demons like Ravana, Kamsa, and Hiranyakashipu, although born of either Brahmana or Kshatriya fathers, used to take meat and flesh without discrimination. This practice is still prevalent in India, and so those who eat meat and fish are generally called demons and Rakshasas. So that was Prabhupada's comment. When the cook was cutting the fish, he found within its stomach a nice baby, which he immediately presented to the charge of Mayabati, who was an assistant in the kitchen affairs. This woman was surprised to see how such a nice baby could remain within the belly of a fish, and the situation perplexed her. Then, all of a sudden, the great sage Narada appeared. Narada Muni Bhajaya Vina Radhika Ramana Name. Narada Muni Bhajaya Vina Radhika Ramana Name. When the great sage Narada appeared, he explained to Mayabati about the birth of Prajuna and how the baby had been taken away by Shambhara and later thrown into the sea. In this way, the whole story was disclosed to Mayabati. At the same time, Mayabati knew that she had previously been Rati, the wife of Cupid, and after her husband was burned to ashes by the wrath of Lord Shiva, she was always expecting him to come back in a material form. So this woman was engaged for cooking rice and dal in the kitchen. But when she got this nice baby and understood from Narada that he was indeed Cupid, her own husband, well, naturally, Mayabati took charge of him and with great affection began bathing him regularly. Miraculously, the baby swiftly grew up, and within a very short period, he became a beautiful young man. His eyes were just like the petals of lotus flowers, and his arms were long down to his knees. Any woman who happened to see him was captivated by Prajuna's bodily beauty. Mayabati could understand that her former husband Cupid, now born as Prajuna, had grown into such a nice young man. Naturally, she also gradually became captivated and lusty. Smiling before him with feminine attractiveness, she expressed her desire for marital union. But Prajuna inquired from her, "How is this possible? First, you were affectionate like a mother, and now you are expressing the symptoms of a lusty woman? What is the reason for such a change?" Upon hearing this statement from Prajuna, Mayabati replied, "Oh, my dear sir, you do not know, but you are the son of Lord Krishna. And before you were 10 days old, you were stolen by the Shambhara demon, and you were later thrown into the sea, and you were swallowed up by a fish. And in this way you have come under my care. But actually, in your former life as Cupid, I was your wife. Therefore, my manifestation of conjugal symptoms is not at all incompatible. Now understand, Shambhara wants to kill you, and he is endowed with various mystic powers. Therefore, before he again attempts to kill you, please kill him as soon as possible with your own divine power. Now, since you were stolen by Shambhara, your mother, Rukmini Devi, has been in a very grievous condition, just like a kurari bird who has lost her babies. Your mother, Rukmini, is very affectionate towards you, and since you have been taken away from her, she has been living like a cow, aggrieved over the loss of its calf. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Now, I have a feeling that something in this section would probably raise some questions. So, predicting that you would have the same question, I did some notes. Listen what I found in my research. When Cupid's body was burned to ashes, Rati worshipped Lord Shiva to obtain another body for Cupid. Shambhara, also having come to Lord Shiva for a benediction, was recognized by Lord Shiva first, who told Shambhara, "Now you should ask for your benediction." Shambhara became struck with lust at seeing Rati, so he replied that he wanted her as his benediction, and Shiva complied. Lord Shiva then consoled the sobbing Rati, telling her, "Okay, you go with him, and in this very home you will attain what you desire." So thereupon, Rati bewildered Shambhara with her deluding power, and taking the name Mayabati, remained in Shambhara's house untouched. So previously, I had done some research because it was also mentioned how Cupid's body was burned to ashes by the anger of Lord Shiva. Now, many years ago, I researched that, but I could not find my research. So by next week, I will research that. And the first thing that I will report next week is the reason why Cupid was burnt by the wrath of Lord Shiva. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. For our next episode, it is entitled, Prajuna Fights the Shambhara Demon. Mayabati had mystic knowledge of supernatural powers. Supernatural powers are generally known as Maya. And to surpass all such supernatural powers, there is yet another supernatural power called Mahamaya. Mayabati had that knowledge of the mystic power of Mahamaya, and she delivered to Prajuna this specific energetic power in order to defeat the mystic powers of the Shambhara demon. Being thus empowered by his wife, Prajuna immediately went before Shambhara, challenging Shambhara to fight. Prajuna addressed Shambhara in very strong language, so that his temper would be agitated, and he would thus be moved to fight. At Prajuna's words, the demon Shambhara, being insulted, felt just like a snake when it feels after being struck by someone's leg. For a serpent cannot tolerate being kicked by another animal or by a man, and so immediately the snake bites its opponent. So Shambhara felt the words of Prajuna as if they were a kick. Shambhara immediately took his club in hand and appeared before Prajuna to fight. Roaring like a thundering cloud in great anger, the demon Shambhara began beating Prajuna with his club, just as a thunderbolt beats a mountain. Prajuna protected himself with his own club, eventually striking the demon very severely. In this way, the fighting between Shambhara-asura and Prajuna began earnestly. But Shambhara-asura also knew the art of mystic powers and could raise himself in the sky and fight from outer space. Because there is a demon of the name Mayadanava, and Shambhara Asura had learned many mystic powers from Mayadanava, Shambhara thus raised himself high in the sky and threw various types of nuclear weapons at the body of Prajuna. To combat the mystic powers of Shambhara Asura, Prajuna invoked another mystic power known as Mahavidya, which was different from the black demoniac mystic power of Shambhara. The Mahavidya mystic power is thus based on the quality of goodness. Shambhara, understanding that his enemy was formidable, took assistance from various kinds of demoniac mystic powers belonging to the Guhyakas, Gandharvas, Pisachas, snakes, and Rakshasas. But although the demon exhibited his mystic powers and took shelter of supernatural strength, Prajuna was able to counteract Shambhara's strength and powers by the superior power of Mahavidya. When Shambhara Asura was thus defeated in every respect, Prajuna took his sharp sword and immediately cut off the demon Shambhara's head, which was decorated with a helmet and valuable jewels. When Prajuna thus killed the demon, all the demigods in the higher planetary systems showered flowers upon Prajuna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Final episode for today, Prajuna meets Rukmini. Prajuna's wife, Mayabati, could travel in outer space, and therefore they directly reached his father's capital, Dwaraka, by the airways. They passed above the palace of Lord Krishna and came down just like a cloud comes down with lightning. The inner section of a palace is known as Antakpura, or private apartments. Prajuna and Mayabati could see many women there, and they sat down among the women. And when the women saw Prajuna, dressed in yellowish garments, with very long arms, curling hair, beautiful reddish eyes, a smiling face, jewelry and ornaments, at first they could not recognize Prajuna as a personality different from Krishna. And they all felt themselves very much bashful at the sudden presence of what they thought was Krishna, and so they wanted to hide in a different corner of the palace. When the women saw, however, that not all the characteristics of Krishna were present in the personality of Prajuna, then out of curiosity, they came back to see Prajuna and his wife, Mayabati. All of the ladies were conjecturing as to who he was, for Prajuna was indeed so beautiful. And among the women was Rukmini Devi, who was equally beautiful, with her lotus-like eyes. Seeing Prajuna, Rukmini naturally remembered her own son, and milk began to flow from the breasts of Rukmini out of motherly affection. Rukmini then began to wonder, who is this beautiful young boy? Why, he appears to be the most beautiful personality. And who is that fortunate young woman, able to conceive this nice boy in her womb and become his mother? And who is that young girl who has accompanied him? How have they met? Oh, remembering my own son, who was stolen from the maternity home, several days after his birth, I can only guess that if my son is living somewhere, he might have grown by this time to be like this boy. So simply by intuition, Rukmini could understand that Prajuna was her own lost son. Rukmini could also observe that Prajuna resembled Lord Krishna in every respect. Rukmini was struck with wonder as to how Prajuna had acquired all the symptoms of Krishna. Rukmini therefore began to think more confidently that this boy must be her own grown-up son, because Rukmini naturally felt so much affection for him. And then there was an auspicious sign. Rukmini's left arm began trembling. And at that very moment, Lord Krishna, along with his father and mother, Devaki and Vasudeva, appeared on the scene. Being the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna could understand everything. But yet in this situation, Krishna remained silent. However, by Krishna's desire, the great Saint Narada just then also appeared. And Narada disclosed all the incidents. How Prajuna had been stolen from the maternity home, and how Prajuna had grown up, and how Prajuna had come here with his wife Mayabati, who had formerly been Rati, the wife of Cupid. So when everyone was informed by Narada Muni of the mysterious disappearance of Prajuna and how Prajuna had grown up, well, they were all struck with wonder, because now they had gotten back their dead son after they were almost hopeless of his return. And when they understood that it was Prajuna who was present, they received Prajuna with great delight. One after another, all the members of the family, Devaki, Vasudeva, Lord Sri Krishna, Balaram, Rukmini, Lord Krishna, and all the women of the family, they all embraced Prajuna and his wife Mayabati. And when the news of Prajuna's return spread all over the city of Dwaraka, all the astonished citizens came with great eagerness just to see the lost Prajuna. And they all said, "Oh, the dead son has come back to life. What can be more pleasing than this?" Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.